Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of Bella Vista. After the Pledge of Allegiance, I would ask that we have a moment of silence to remember Officer Cummins and also his family and his loved ones. So if you'll rise, please, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
We'll do the roll call of council. Councilmember Wozniak.
Here.
Flynn.
Here.
Fowler.
Here.
Burke.
Present.
Wilms.
Here.
Snow.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. We move on to citizen input. Please be advised that the policy is that you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The city clerk will be actually timing. And first up is Larry Kelly.
Oh my.
You're right on top, Larry. Do you want to use the microphone up here, sir? Because we are taping it.
Okay. My name is Larry Kelly. I live at 12506 Collar Lane, Bentonville, and have been working with the city on the septic ordinance, and I'm happy to see some of the revisions that have taken place. This is something I think we can support. And I'd just like to thank the City of Bella Vista for bringing in the stakeholders on this, the Realtors Association, the Home Builders Association. We had some health department people involved in the beginning as well. And so I think we come up with a better product when we all work together. And I'd really appreciate the opportunity to do that in the future. And thank Councilman Wilms for his input and his work on this. And, you know, we're all actually working to try and solve the same problem. We just might have different perspectives. So hope to be able to do that in the future on other things.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Marcia Mateo.
Good evening, gentlemen. I have lived in Bella Vista since 2007, came down here to work with the school districts, and then it was time to leave that, and I have been active with a business in my home, and I became a member of the Bella Vista Business Association, so I'm here just to listen to hear what your plans are with this licensing. So I'm just here basically to listen, but to know that there should be, from my point of view, no restrictions on people who are using their home rather than going to an office to conduct business and to be an entrepreneur and to bring money and people into Bella Vista to see what a wonderful community this is.
Thank you. And Pat Duncan.
My name is Pat Duncan. I live at 4 Harlow Drive here in Bella Vista. I've been here for a little over 6 years. I am, for the last 25 years, an Avon representative, independent sales, and team leader, loud and proud. I'm here to listen to what's being said about this ordinance. I'm not sure that I understand why I would be charged for using a room in my home that I pay taxes on. So I'm going to be open-minded about this, and hopefully working with the Business Association, we can come to something that's workable for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. My thanks to everyone who has spoken to council this evening. We certainly appreciate the input. We come to council reply. Anybody wish to say anything? Steve?
I would just say thank you, everybody. This is good to see this much participation in our meeting. So we welcome you guys to be here, and thank you for your input. And thank you for showing up tonight and taking part of your personal time to do this. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Sam, I appreciate all the comments on the septic ordinance. I know it's the amended ordinance, I believe, that everyone's commenting on. I'll reserve some comments for that. They're going to be very brief whenever we have a conversation about it. I feel pretty sure that there will be someone that will propose, recommend the amended ordinance. I don't know who it's going to be. But I would just like to recognize that I know there was a committee and there were several people that were involved, and that's great, and that's terrific. Still, it seemed like the progress struggled somewhat, right? But then the timing really couldn't have been better, that CDS department, and I'm sure along with the mayor, in conjunction with Doug Tapp, and I don't know who all made the decision of a hire of a gentleman named Fred Huddleston that moved here from California. And he really has a wealth and depth of knowledge, in this whole process that was discussed, as far as like septic ordinance and whatever. He really brought and shed light on everything, and I think kind of broke the ice on this and gave us a breakthrough, if you will. So just to Doug and the mayor for that hire, I really appreciate it, because he was tremendously helpful.
I'd like to thank Doug Tapp and Fred Huddleston for the input that they provided. Doug has been struggling with this since the first of the year, and we've had a number of meetings with the work group for input. I think we started off in what we thought was a good direction, and as we filtered through the drafts, we came upon a final review here a couple of weeks ago and got additional input on what was being proposed. And so we've crafted language for tonight's presentation that someone will propose to amend the current draft on the agenda to include a revision that incorporates comments that were addressed by the public speakers. So I want to thank them for their input and effort. Patience as well.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the September 27th regular meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wells, seconded by Mr. Wozniak.
Okay, roll call vote. Councilmember Snow,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Thank you. Finance Director Hall has sent out the July and the August financials. I want to thank Chief Sims, who's in the audience tonight, for his tenacity in working with the ambulance billing company. They had a glitch in their software and it held us up for 2 months because we couldn't get the ambulance revenue figured out. But all is well. So thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules and read all proposed ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Snow, seconded by Mr. Wilms.
Okay, roll call vote again. Councilmember Wozniak,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Thank you. Old business is an ordinance adopting local standards for sewage disposal systems with regulating minimum septic requirements, requiring notification to owners of septic system design, and approval limits, providing definitions, providing penalties for violation, declaring an emergency, and for other purposes. This is the third and final reading.
3 hours.
And Mr. Kelly has sent out and handed out this evening a copy of a proposed amended, which I believe was the one that Mr. Wilms and Mr. Huddleston and Mr. Kelly worked on after the work session. I'm in full support of it. I know Mr. Huddleston is also in support of this. Mr. Kelly, any words at all?
No, I'll certainly answer any questions, but just in terms of procedure, this is on third reading, and so really at this point, if you wish to proceed with the version which was handed out and which was printed out, someone needs to move to amend the proposal to read as presented in this document, and then a second on that motion, and then any further debate on that motion, and then a vote, and then final debate and a motion to approve.
So entertain a motion to amend.
I think that's the time code. You are right, you got 4 hours.
Moved by Mr. Wells, seconded by Mr. Wozniak.
Roll call.
Hold on. Discussion.
No.
On the motion to amend, there can be debate.
Of course.
Yes. Okay.
All right. I want to be sure that this version that has the deed restriction solution is the version that the roundtable participants are saying they're in support of.
They just did.
So, well, I don't know which one. The agenda tonight has a different version. And so we spoke about the deed restrictions at the last work session for the first time. So Doug, has the deed restriction solution, has that been discussed at the roundtable?
It is,
Okay.
but they haven't seen, some of them have seen this amendment, but it hadn't been introduced yet, so it wasn't in the packet.
It's not in the packet. All right. I'm not clear that everybody's working off the same version, because what was in the packet for tonight's agenda is not the version that we're talking about now. It's a completely different solution.
I guess I would beg to differ a little bit. It's not a completely different one. It's been streamlined so that the language is simplified in terms of review and interpretation.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of carry forward with my comments from the work session, and that is, I think putting a deed restriction onto the property, that the builder will be required to put that deed restriction onto the property if their capacity is less than the number of bedrooms that they want to market. I think we have a problem already in Bella Vista with deed restrictions. We have enough of them already. I think the deed restriction really is a burden to the buyer more so than to the builder. And I think it's not worded in a way that a buyer is going to appreciate and understand that they're purchasing a home that has restrictions on how they can use that home. I don't think that's fair to the buyer. And I favor a more simplified version, a more simplified solution, where we had common ground in the work session, was that we all agreed that the solution for this is to educate and inform the buyer. And so what I've been favoring since this discussion came before the City Council months ago is a solution where the buyer is required to be informed at the closing table, no later than. And I think smart realtors will see that that's an opportunity for a hiccup that they want to get in front of. They want to educate their buyers that they're purchasing a home that may look like a 4-bedroom home, but it has a septic capacity of 2 bedrooms. And I think trying to do a deed restriction is far too complex, and the wording does not adequately inform the buyer. And I'd like to read that wording again for the City Council one more time. It's not clear, if you're a buyer, what kind of deed restriction you're buying into. It doesn't say you're buying a home that looks like a 4-bedroom home that has a 2-bedroom septic capacity. Instead, what it says is, somebody want to help me with that? that goes in the deed restriction. Now, that's the sticker that goes on the electrical box. We all agree that's a good idea. For new construction, we want to see a sticker go on the electrical box that says, this home has a septic capacity designed for X number of bedrooms, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or more.
I think what you're looking for is section 2. Optional deed restriction for additional units.
That doesn't include the wording that would go in the deed restriction.
Mr. Kelly?
I think what Mr. Burke's talking about, there was one form that was handed out, that Fred handed out from another jurisdiction that was a form like a deed restriction form they used there. That's not mandated to be used in this. That was just a sort of a sample. But in this proposed, if you adopt this amendment, this new section 2, I'll just read it to you. Applicants for building permits of residential structures relying on individual sewage disposal systems may be permitted to build a structure the building official determines exceeds the size limitations of a sewage disposal system permit issued pursuant to the rules and regulations of the Arkansas Department of Health by having executed and recorded a deed restriction by the current owner or owners of the property in a form approved by the Director of Community Development Services, limiting the number of bedrooms in the structure to that number stated in the Health Department sewage disposal system permit. So the deed restriction purpose would be, it would be a restriction limiting the number of bedrooms in the structure to that number stated in the Health Department sewage disposal system permit. So that's the operative restriction. And the actual form of the deed restriction would be something like what you saw, but it would not be exactly what you saw. We have not drafted that yet.
Okay, I'm not sure how we can be accountable and responsible in review of this without knowing what the deed restriction looks like, because we're gonna create a law that says there has to be a deed restriction. And the one that we discussed was no additional flow of added bedrooms shall be introduced to the sanitary system associated with the existing X-bedroom residence. And I don't think that's clear.
Well, we're not using that, so that's not even on the table. So it would be a document that, what this ordinance does is empowers the Director of Community Development Services, that's Doug Tapp, to approve a form to use for the deed restriction. So we have discussed it, but I'm sure I'm going to end up drafting that.
I would think so.
In coordination with Doug Tapp, and the only limitation it would have would be the number of bedrooms in the structure, limiting them to that number, say, the Health Department sewage disposal system permit. It's going to mirror that language just as well as I can. So
Yeah.
that's the limit.
City Council, I
Favor a simpler, keep it simple approach here. I favor one that says we're going to inform the buyer. We're going to post the number of septic system of the number of bedrooms the septic system is designed to handle. We're going to post that on new construction, and for every home sold in Bella Vista going forward, for every closing of a home sold in Bella Vista going forward, the buyer is going to sign an acknowledgement of the number of bedrooms that the septic system is designed to handle. And once the buyer is informed, I think that's the solution. I think it ought to come with the Arkansas Department of Health guide to owning a septic system. I think the problem here is really trying to protect the buyer and trying to inform the buyer. I don't think it's to put another deed restriction on our property. We already have 37 pages. Everybody who owns property in Bella Vista and has acquired that property since 1965 has 37 pages of deed restrictions attached to their property. And a lot of people don't know it at closing. And I think we're only making that matter worse here. And so I think that solution, keeping it simple, is a better solution than diving into writing a deed restriction that limits how the buyer can use their property going forward. And so I said, you know, one of the problems with this is we talk in terms of system, septic system capacity in terms of the number of bedrooms. But if you have empty bedrooms, that's not really a problem.
The problem is, how many people do you have in the home? And I've wondered and tried to understand, we've all become a lot more knowledgeable about septic systems probably than we ever cared to. But what the way the state regulations are written around that, it does speak in terms of bedrooms. And the assumption is there's 2 people in every bedroom. And so that says your home is designed to handle, over an extended period of time, 4 people. And why wouldn't I be able to buy a home and have 1 person in each of 4 different bedrooms? I don't understand why we would put some kind of burden like that on the buyer. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's a good solution. And because of that, Mayor, City Council, I'd like to move to table indefinitely until we can extract the deed restriction aspects of this solution.
Okay, anybody else?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
so that motion, are you moving to table the amendment or the ordinance itself? We're about to get into real deep
Okay,
weeds.
all right. Well, you tell me what,
Well,
you
if
you understand what
wanna
I'm trying to
amend
do.
the whole, excuse me, if you want to move to table the whole thing, that's
do.
not in order at this point, because
Okay.
we're only debating the amendment.
Okay.
So you would need to make that after the vote on the amendment.
Fair enough.
either up or down.
Fair enough. I'll tell you what, then, just to be clear on my position on this, I appreciate the work that's gone into it. The deed restriction, I don't think is the right solution. I would oppose the amendment for that.
Mr. Fowler?
Yeah, so this has been kicked down the road forever. I think we finally have come to a solution, although maybe it isn't perfect. I don't know any solution to any problem is ever perfect, okay? Here's something I do take issue with, and I'll apologize right up front. We had a conversation about this last Monday, and we had a whole week. If there were issues with this, or there are certain things that someone would like to see, I don't know why we wait till tonight to have that conversation rather than get involved in the process. Sit down with the people that have been worked through it, put it together, and help draft or put together what you would like to see. This is like
We spoke about
The
that very
last minute.
topic. No, it's not. We spoke about that.
Monday night last week.
Yes.
But there wasn't
And I
something you were
asked-
happy with. No, wait a minute.
I asked what the process was if we were going to introduce another amendment. I was advised not to try to have competing amendments, to work this one first.
We could have worked it probably into this one.
Mayor, you've got to recognize someone to speak, and then, until they yield the floor, and then someone else gets
Okay,
recognized
so
to
you're going to have
speak.
to hold off, because Doug has the floor.
All I'm saying is like, this is like last minute. So I don't know. It's not the way I approach things. This week we have, for example, a proposed business license ordinance. I have spent an inordinate amount of time on an ordinance, researching it, talking to people, turning it over. I have 3 pages of notes on that I've made. And I'm prepared to talk about it tonight, like in depth. I don't know how far into it I'm going to go, but I'm not waiting for someone else to produce something for me. And I don't even think that this would have been some other amendment to the proposed amended ordinance that we have for the septic system. It just would have been maybe a little more specifically spelled out of what you would have liked to have seen in the deed restriction wording or verbiage, is what it sounds like to me. Because if that's not, then I'm confused. But we can debate the amended ordinance when it comes up, or we can talk about it. But at this last minute of the day, to kick this down the road again, I will not be in support of that. It's just, this should have been settled before we came in here tonight. And maybe
I
you
agree.
still wouldn't have been happy.
May I reply?
Yes.
Doug, in our meeting Monday night, I asked exactly that question. I was more than happy to work the amendment at that time, and I asked for advice and process clarification. And I was told we would not have competing amendments. I was more than willing to do that, Doug. And I was advised that we should work this amendment first. And I said everything I just said tonight, I said in the work session. I was opposing the deed restriction. I didn't think it was a good solution. I think it's heavy-handed. It's the government restricting a buyer who may not understand the wording of what they're agreeing to when they buy the home. I don't think it's fair. I didn't think it was fair Monday night. I was more than happy to work the issue and was advised. And Councilor Kelly, if you don't mind clarifying, didn't we have this very exact discussion?
I don't remember ever saying, or anyone ever saying, that there could not be more than one amendment offered. I don't recall that. But if you want to have, you can offer, you're sitting up there, you can offer whatever amendment you want to offer. No one can stop you or keep you from doing that.
But we have to vote on this one first.
Right, well,
And then
procedurally, the question for debate is the motion to amend to read as is presented on the paper. And then your procedural rules require that any amendment offered to an ordinance during the meeting must be in writing.
Right.
So that's what the procedures are.
Okay, does anybody else want to, John?
I'll be brief. I think the idea of a deed restriction is fine, and I like the way this amendment has a deed restriction and has the notice on the electrical panel as well. I was clear last week, Steve, that you didn't like the deed restriction. I thought you expressed that eloquently. But we've worked on this a long time. We have an amendment that the city supports, and the builders and realtors, apparently many of them support and are willing to live with it. And I think it improves the situation, so I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Mr. Wozniak?
You know, I would have thought this would always be done by now, and I would have thought the biggest opposition to this would have been the realtors and the builders. We had a couple of them get up here tonight and then say they're for it. So I don't know why we're still playing with it. The people who I thought would be the biggest obstacles to this thing seem to be for it, and they're the ones who are going to have to be enforce some of it when they sit down and talk to these people. So I'm fully comfortable with the amendment.
Okay.
It's got everything it needs to keep people safe, and all you have to do is read. And if we take your 37 pages of covenants, maybe 2 or 3 of them have anything to do with a house being built or a yard. So, you know, you blow that up a little bit, you know, that's a little much.
Mr. Snell?
I just got a question. It kind of pertains to my personal situation and what if a deed restriction. But my house was a new house and moved in November, and the septic system failed in April. But I'm now on sewer. So if I had a deed restriction saying that it was limited to 2 bedrooms, how is that deed restriction removed?
Well, it would be, the restriction is going to limit it to the number of bedrooms, assuming the structure is used on an individual sewage disposal system. So the way it would be worded is if it ended up on sewer and is no longer on a septic system, then I think the deed restriction could certainly be drafted that would make that clear, and then the restriction would, practically speaking, go away. There wouldn't have to be anything recorded or anything. It would only apply for septic system structures on that property, and there wouldn't be one.
Okay, anyone else, Larry?
For clarification, I think all of you that spoke tonight from the builders and homeowners and the real estate group, you've seen the new current draft, have you not? What we've attempted to do with this third draft, if you want to say it's a third draft, it is in fact a third draft that we're offering tonight with this amendment. And what this attempts to do is to simplify the process not only for the builders coming in with plans and applications to the building inspection department for approval. It makes it very clear that additional rooms are not an obstacle or a difficulty for them to propose. It's if the rooms appear to resemble those of a bedroom usage, then perhaps the deed restriction would apply, but only in those instances. So you bring in a house with an office and an exercise room, those are not necessarily logically or intuitively being used or could be used as a bedroom. Depends upon the configuration, how those rooms relate to the house in general, as to whether a deed restriction would even be considered or required. So it's really the building plan that comes in gets reviewed by the building inspection department. If it looks like a bedroom, it smells like a bedroom, feels like a bedroom to the plan reviewer, the chief building official, then a deed restriction would be required before occupancy permit would be issued. But only in those instances. But additional rooms are not a question or not an issue with this plan. It simplifies that whole process. Before we tried to describe and quantify what a bedroom would look like, and so you change something, you change the window size, you change the door size, you do something to make it look different, and all of a sudden it's fallen off the map, but you haven't addressed the issue. And the issue is how many rooms in the house are being used actively for bedrooms. And so what this does is it puts on notice for the building, for the builder, the owners at the time of building, if it's a contract build, puts them on notice that you've got a 2-bedroom septic or a 4-bedroom septic. You're limited in that house for usage of bedrooms actively as 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or 4-bedroom based on that septic permit. And so it's not, we're not being the bedroom police. We're not going out to inspect it after it gets occupied, but it is a notice then that would follow through with subsequent owners and say, it's really a 2-bedroom house. No, it's really a 3-bedroom house. No, it's really a 4-bedroom house, because that's the size of the septic system that was constructed there. So I think we've streamlined it and made it as simple as we can, and made it flexible in terms of the building coming in, and that was one of the big objections to the prior drafts, I think, is that builders wanted to propose additional rooms with additional purposes. They wanted to have an office and an exercise room, or a painting room, or whatever, but didn't want it to be called a bedroom simply because there were extra rooms offered. And so I think this addresses that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Snow?
Just one more question on this deed restriction and removal of it. Should this ordinance be amended to provide for a means of removing that restriction? Because that's an official document that's become a part of the title to that property.
No, what I'm saying is that the deed restriction document, getting back somewhat to what Mr. Burke, I guess, was referring to, it's going to, by its terms, when I draft it, okay, they'll put limiting language in there that it only applies while the structure is used by a septic tank, basically. It'll be more artful than that, but it's what it's going to say. And so, and it will remain in place. If we've got other ordinances in place that would require a connection to sewer upon a sale, if sewer becomes available out on the street, say, for example, that happens, then once they connect to sewer, by the terms of the deed restriction, it would no longer be applicable. So you would not have to revoke anything. There would not need to be further action by the government or the owners even. It would just, it wouldn't apply because there was no septic tanking use there anymore.
All right.
Okay.
Here.
You want to say some more?
One final appeal, if I could. I don't know how we as city councilors can approve a law that's going to require a deed restriction and not have the wording of the deed restriction in front of us. I don't know how we can do that.
Okay. All righty. I think we've kicked it around enough.
Call
Go to
for
a
the
roll call
question.
vote, please.
Okay, this is on the motion to amend.
Correct.
Councilmember Snow,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Burke.
No.
Carried 5-1.
Okay, now we move into a motion to approve the amended version.
Right, final approval, and
Final approval.
and of course, there's time for debate before that happens as well. So.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Wozniak and Mr. Wilms. Any more discussion on this? I know you're bursting at the seams, Steve. Go ahead.
I'm not.
No?
I've heard enough. I think I understand the
Okay.
fate of this tonight.
Mr. Fowler?
No, so I appreciate this version. I think it allows, probably several things, but a few. It will, now allow small lots to be developed that otherwise might not have been able to. Could have been taken out of the equation. We know Bella Vista has an inordinate amount of those, and if you want to, or a builder or even a potential resident moving here wants to design a home, you're able to design a two-bedroom home with an office or workout room or whatever that might be, without that third bedroom causing a larger septic system. And I guess really it's not the size of the tank that's the issue, it's probably the septic field more than the tank.
It is.
It provides notice to all buyers, so you go into the purchase with your eyes wide open. I would hope that realtors and builders would not be unethical in that regard and try to wink that, hey, yeah, it's a two-bedroom septic, but you could change this into a bedroom if you wanted to. I think by law, that's a very sticky subject and not the way to go. And knowing the situation, a buyer can require an inspection, and I'm probably talking, the second, the third, the fourth owner. If you have any question whatsoever that septic system may have been abused by a prior family or families, require the seller to provide an inspection of the septic system to make sure that, there are no issues with it. So I think this is really a really good solution to what has been made into a very complicated issue.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Because one question would be, the emergency clause is written in as a part of this ordinance.
That'll be a separate motion after we do this.
We need to do that, okay.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion to approve on the floor.
Okay, roll call vote. Councilmember Burke?
No.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yes.
Snow?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Wilms?
Yes.
Carried 5-0.
Thank you.
5-1.
5-1.
5-1.
5-1.
5-1.
A move to adopt the emergency clause for implementation to be on the first of the month following the effective date of
The emergency clause provided says it would take a full force and effect on the first day of the month following adoption as provided by law. So you move to adopt the emergency clause.
Move to adopt the emergency clause.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Mr. Fowler? Any discussion? Wayne?
Okay. Councilmember Flynn?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Wilms?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Burke?
No.
Snow?
Yes.
Carried 5-1.
There's a French expression, and it goes enfin, which means finally. Okay, we'll move on to ordinance number B for the evening, is requiring a business license for the operation of business in the city, including short-term rentals and home-based businesses, providing for for specific applicability of the requirement, providing for fees for issuance, providing grounds and procedures for suspension or revocation of a business license, providing a penalty for violations, and for other purposes. This is, Wayne, it's the first?
Right, first reading.
Okay, discussion.
I have proposed this ordinance for a number of reasons, one of those being identity. We have no idea how many businesses we have in Bella Vista. If some large business or some large facility of some type wanted to locate in Bella Vista, one of the questions would be, how many businesses do you have? Well, we have no idea. We're a city of 30,000 people and have no idea how many businesses we have located here. Most all the cities surrounding us in northwest Arkansas, Centerton, Bentonville, Fayetteville, every place except Bella Vista has a business licensing ordinance. Another reason for it is public safety issues. Fire department needs to know, especially in our home-based businesses, what that business might be selling, might be manufacturing, what kind of materials they might have on hand that would cause be an explosive or a dangerous chemical. There are, I could go on to a number of reasons, but I know I heard Councilman Fowler say that he had 3 pages of questions and objections, so I think probably it'd be a good time to stop and let it go on in that direction.
Mr. Fowler, do you want the floor?
Yeah. Yeah, 3 pages of notes. And I certainly don't want to read all of them, and I know no one else in here wants me to read all of them either. So I personally feel that this ordinance, it's somewhat ill-conceived. I think it's ill-prepared, and to a certain extent, Jason, this is no commentary on your ability to write an ordinance, but I think it's somewhat ill-written. It's already been stated that the writing of this ordinance was cobbled together from what other cities had written into their code. So really, I think it was just kind of put together in a way at the last minute, or if you will, kind of by the seat of the pants, and that's what you end up with is, you end up with something that's really not well prepared or well thought through. Maybe a business license requirement made sense back in the day for whatever reason. But I think in today's environment with the internet-based businesses, of which many are just hobbies or side notes, plus the fact that contractors operate in such a fluid environment in and out of multiple municipalities on a day-to-day basis, it's going to be very hard, to keep up with them, or even inform them that a business license is required in the city of Bella Vista. And I believe this ordinance tries to capture all of that. The way I read it, it does. I don't believe there was any discussion held with the department where the responsibilities of managing this ordinance are outlined in the ordinance, that are outlined in the ordinance. This particular ordinance ignores zoning regulations already in place in our zoning ordinance, and in fact are in direct conflict with some of those statutes written in those zoning ordinances. So it also addresses short-term rentals, but there are no parameters or restrictions under which short-term rentals must abide by if in operation in the city of Bella Vista. And I've already stated before, we have begun work on a short-term rental ordinance. It places the determination of whether a business is operating ethically on local municipal officials. That could be Doug Tapp with CDS, it could be the mayor, and they could even roll over to the city council to make a determination on whether a business license should be suspended or revoked. Quite frankly, I don't want to get in the middle of those conversations. I believe those will probably be more legal matters than they are local city official matters. I believe this ordinance reads like a warning to the businesses of Bella Vista or any business located outside of Bella Vista that does business here, and it's more or less a statement to beware. If it's reported that you have operated in any manner deemed inappropriate, which seems like inappropriate is subjective at this point, the city will suspend or revoke your license to operate in Bella Vista. So I asked a question. Who asked for the ordinance, or by what need is it being introduced, and by who? And I think we know that. We know who it is. It's Council Member Snow. But again, what was the determining factor for why it was even introduced? I mean, did somebody bring it up? Do we have an issue here? It feels as though this ordinance proposition was kind of dreamed up, if you will. Thought it might have some justification if enough reasons could be thought up. I don't think they were really in play in the beginning. One of the reasons for justification, well, what if, somebody wants to bring a business in here, some peep show or adult content or something like that. Well, that is already covered under a zoning ordinance that would only allow that type of business to operate in an I-1 light industrial zoning district. And in Bella Vista right now, we only have 2 of those. One is at the sewage, in the area of the sewage waste disposal property, and then another one is the valley that where T.H. Rogers is. And even if somebody did want to locate some type of business here, it's only allowed under a conditional use permit. Conditional use permits must be vetted, if you will. There must be notice of a notice to the public. You have to have a public meeting. The planning department would have to review it and approve it. The planning commission would have to approve it, and then I assume it would come on to the city council. So anyway, there's already a provision for a situation like that, and that is not the only instance of conflict that I see here.
Another point of rationalization mentioned was that it would ensure the payment of sales taxes. Well, sales taxes are remitted to the state, and the state sends that money back to the cities. But there is no detail of who pays those taxes or how much. It's a privacy issue. So there wouldn't be any extra impetus, if you will, to pay your sales tax, because no one really knows whether you do or not. I'm not saying that sales taxes shouldn't be paid. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it wouldn't help figure out whether someone's paying it or not. I do understand that other cities have a business licensing ordinance. What do they do with it? Has anyone asked? Anything practical? Is this ordinance just a monkey see, monkey do, type proposition? And personally, I am not for doing one more thing just because. So what research and what conversation within the city of Bella Vista took place prior to the introduction of the ordinance? Again, it's written that CDS is going to manage this ordinance, and actually maybe determine whether a business could or could not receive a license. That seems like a pretty heavy burden to bear to me. And so far, it appears to me that only one department, and that is the fire department, was contacted, and I've heard exactly one example from them of how this ordinance might have relevance. And once again, we're approaching that conversation and that subject through a short-term rental ordinance that is in the process of being written right now. Was there any consideration given to the resources that would be required by CDS to manage the determination and issuing of these business licenses? Is there any awareness that the finance department in most cities has a responsibility for issuing these licenses, not community development services? And I would just ask Doug Tapp a rhetorical question, is what would be the criteria in recommending that a business license be suspended or revoked, or even whether a license will be issued or not? I mean, do we know? Okay, will vendors that come into Bella Vista for the Arts and Crafts Festival or the Back 40 Run and Ride, etc., to set up temporary shop be required to apply and be issued a business license? Will code enforcement be required to actively police these events for violators and issue citations, of which a citation for not having a business license, if you do not have one, as according to this ordinance, is $250 a day? Will code enforcement have the authority to approach a person or company doing contract work at someone's home or business and require the contractor to produce proof of a Bella Vista business license? And I do understand that if they have a business license in another city, then that would serve as a business license for the city of Bella Vista as well. But I mean, what will be the steps taken to answer questions like that? I have several items in the proposed ordinance, again, that are direct conflict with zoning statutes already written into our current code, or in some instances, there are no provisions at all. I could go by them one by one, but if you look at section 109-176, home occupations, the home business has to be located completely within the principal dwelling unit. This solely operated by the owner and occupant of the dwelling. No non-resident persons are employed. However, if you read the ordinance that is proposed, in the parking situation of it, it says that employees could be allowed to park in the driveway, or employees could be allowed to park on the street, when in fact, in our own ordinance we have right now, there are no employees allowed. And I could read through several more instances of conflict. And again, the short-term rental part of it, bed and breakfast, we only have zoning ordinance right now that addresses bed and breakfast. We do not have an ordinance that addresses VRBOs, where you might rent out an entire home, or you might rent out just a room. So, there are different things we'll write into that code, specifically to short-term rentals, but it should be its own separate zoning specification, if you will, and all those addressed there. Lastly, what I would say is, if this ordinance or this thought of a business license would move forward, I think we should strip out all the language that has to do with determining whether a business should be allowed to operate or not, either license suspended or revoked. I think the short-term rental part should be stripped out. If you want to have like a business registry of some type, so you could record what businesses were in Bella Vista, that's fine, possibly. But with all this other stuff written in there, there's no way that I could support this. And I did get an email today from a lady asking and wanting to know if her business she does on Etsy, I don't even know how you say it, would that be required to have a business license? According to this, the way I read it, it would. If you collect sales tax like you're supposed to and remit it to the state, you would have to acquire a business license. I have no idea how we would manage and keep our arms around what's going on. And we already know from our dog licensing ordinance, I don't even know how many dog licenses we issued, but we know we probably had five times that number in Bella Vista. And we also know from the city of Fayetteville, who enacted a short-term rental ordinance, they had at least 300 or 400 short-term rentals in Fayetteville, and they had a six-month grace period to register those businesses with the city. And I believe they had, what was it, Doug, like 40 signups, and that's it. Now, we're going to write a short-term rental ordinance here. Just as a heads up, well, how would we know? Just so you'll know, we are going to contract with a company called Granicus. They're a technology company, and they have methods to, if you will, uncover through the internet and provide a list of short-term rental properties that we have in Bella Vista. That'll help us, be able to chase down and be able to know where these short-term rentals are, who owns them, et cetera. So anyway, all right, that's enough. Too much. I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Snow?
Well, first of all, I appreciate Councilman Fowler referring to me as a monkey, but hey, that's all right. I've been referred to as other things. And Mr. Kelly's position, I always thought Mr. Kelly was a competent, capable, very competent and capable attorney, but I don't know. Sounds like maybe we need to revisit that issue. But in response to the lady that mentioned that the Bella Vista Business Association would like to work with me on this ordinance, I did send a copy of this ordinance to the president of the association and did not hear anything further, who asked if she could share it with the board of directors, and I never heard anything further regarding that. So I did not know that the business association wanted to have any input. One of the reasons for this ordinance is to try to establish some control over these bogus contractors that we seem to have an unusual number of them, whether it be tree trimmers, roofers, all the different things that remodelers that come in and maybe do half a job and then get paid for all of it and leave. The police department has a problem dealing with those situations because they border sometimes on being a civil matter rather than a criminal matter. Well, most of those people will not obtain a business license, so this gives the police department another tool to deal with in those individuals. Again, there's a number of reasons, a number of positives to support the business license. One of the things that was mentioned in Centerton, let's just say in Centerton, if a business license is revoked or rejected in Centerton for whatever the reason might be, then that business can come to Bella Vista without any problem. I mean, anybody can come in with any kind of business and open it in Bella Vista. But it sounds like that all of the objections that Councilman Fowler has to this particular ordinance will also apply to the proposed ordinance that he may have in mind regarding short-term rentals or bed and breakfast. Again, I think it has positive meaning for the city of Bella Vista, and I propose that it be considered further.
Mayor Christie.
Okay, well, there's still 2 more readings. Mr. Burke and then.
If I
Mr.
might,
Williams.
I want to say I appreciate Councilmember Snow's attempt, especially to try to manage the situation with unscrupulous contractors. That happens in, I think, every community. I think on balance, though, I would oppose the entirety of it. I don't think it's pro-business. I don't think it's a conservative principle to have this kind of regulation on top of our businesses. I think about the Bella Vista Business Association members and non-members, people who are trying to make a living, entrepreneurs, small business owners. They're just trying to make a living. They're good people. I think of the people at the farmers market. We're going to tell them that every year they've got to come down and renew their permit and give the city some money. It just doesn't feel right to me. It feels like we tried to use a sledgehammer as a solution when a screwdriver would have been fine. I believe, if I understood Mr. Kelly's comments about this, is that we could only require business licenses for businesses that have their office in Bella Vista. So these contractors that may come and go in the middle of the night, they wouldn't even be eligible for a business license, and they probably wouldn't apply for one in the first place, if I understood that correctly, Mr. Kelly.
Well, you're only required to have, if you're licensed in another city.
Yes.
Then your city cannot require a business
Well, there you
license.
go.
So if they're not licensed in another city, then and they're doing business and paying sales tax and otherwise meet the requirements,
Right.
then I think we could.
Right.
But that's going to be different in each case.
For me, this isn't the time to put this kind of burden and expectation on our business owners in Bella Vista. I think we need to do everything we can to be supportive of them, to encourage them, to help them when possible. And so I don't feel like this ordinance is sensible on the whole.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams?
Just for clarification, I understood Mr. Fowler to say that we don't do in-home licensing. Mr. Lynn and Ms. Robertson, do we issue Planning Commission conditional use permits for in-home businesses where they operate in the home? Some cities do. It's in their code. I know some around the area issue a conditional use permit. It may be an administrative process in some cities, may be more formalized, that it goes through the Planning Commission in total for in-home businesses, but it provides at least a registration vehicle. We don't do that, do we?
Currently the Planning Commission, we do not, conditional use permits don't, they don't review.
For home businesses, home-based businesses?
No, the closest thing that we have to that right now is just a zoning compliance letter, where so they come to us. It's not something that we seek out, and we make sure that their home business is allowed by right as a home occupation. But it's not required to operate one in Bella Vista.
So you issue a letter then to those people who come and speak with you?
If they come and if it meets our home occupation code, yes.
Okay, okay. So there's
Okay.
some.
Mr. Wozniak?
Thank you.
These need to be separated regardless. The business on one side and the B&Bs and others on the other. They need to come forward by themselves. For a number of reasons, and this is first reading and I don't like this and I don't like that. Every time something comes up, we play that game. And we beat it down till we get to the third reading, and then we get nervous, and then all of a sudden we do something. Maybe we shouldn't even be this far yet, because it just come up. There wasn't any discussion prior to this coming on the table, and bingo, here it is. This just needs to go sit for a while. You've got 2 more readings. That may or may not be enough time, the way the opposition is for and against. This just needs to sit for a while, or go the whole works and then sit it at the end if we're still not happy. But we need to have something on some of the stuff. I'm real big on the registering the bed and breakfast, because I've heard from people who have those on both sides, and even Airbnbs, more people than the house can handle, noise late at night, too many cars in the parking lot. So the cops go and say, hey, you can't do that, but this continues on. What kind of recourse do we have to take the property owner and say, hey, this is what's happened on your piece of ground, and you need to change? And that's a separate issue from the business thing. But yeah, we need to have these, but separate, totally each going a different direction. They don't need to be map together because there's so much involved.
Okay, we've had some good discussion. Do you want to leave it at that? Does anybody want to table it?
No, I would just say, Jim, I agree with you, you know. I think the research, the homework, the conversations, public meeting, if it's required, should be done first, and then an ordinance written and proposed that gets a lot closer to where we think we need to be. But that's not the way this happened. This just showed up. And so, you know, the legwork, the homework, the research, the questions, the visiting with people had to begin because it started. I mean, this is the first reading. So I think that's the way most all ordinances should work. You know, don't just put some on paper and throw it in front of me, and then I've got to consider whether to vote for it or not. You know, so yeah, agreed.
Okay, we still have 2 more readings, or you have the option of tabling. Okay, we'll move on to the next ordinance, which is amending Section 24-21, permit required of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Bella Vista to remove the specific application fee amount and permit the City Council to set the application fee by resolution. Staff is requesting third and final. So this is the setting of the fees within CDS. It currently requires an ordinance, which takes far too long. And if you approve this, if you'll look at the first resolution, it then goes in and it adopts a brand new fee listing for CDS, and it happens immediately. So that's why this is going on. Counselor, have I explained it properly?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'd like to suspend the rules and move to third and final.
Okay.
I'll second.
It's moved by Mr. Fowler, seconded by Mr. Wilms. Is there any discussion? Wayne?
Okay. Roll call vote. Councilmember Snow?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Wilms?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Carried 6-0.
Okay, third and final, amending Section 24-21, permit required of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Bella Vista to remove the specific application fee amount and permit the City Council to set the application fee by resolution. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Wozniak, seconded by Mr. Wilms. Is there any discussion at all?
No, I would just like to say, like we mentioned, or brought it up before, of course, it was last Monday, and, you know, in your absence, so I'd ask Jason, but permit fees, they're not set to be a profit proposal. They're really just set to cover the cost of administration of those permits and fees and the legwork of going out to building sites, et cetera.
If you go further than that, you run the risk of it being determined to be an illegal tax.
Mm-hmm.
So if you stay within those parameters, you're well within the guidelines of what a fee permits, allows. And so if you decided you were going to, this is not the proposal, so I don't want to get anyone, but you're going to charge a $5,000 fee for a fence, then obviously that far exceeds the administrative duties responsible in approving and reviewing a fence, and it would clearly be something that would be the city trying to raise money. So that's an obvious circumstance. So there is a cap. At some point, I would just say it would be a cap of reasonableness, but this is certainly well within that. So basically, you're correct in your statement.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Ready for a vote? Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Wilms?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Snow?
Yes.
Carried 6-0.
Thank you. Then we move into the world of resolutions. Adopting a revised planning application fee schedule. If you look in your packet, you can see the planning application fee schedule as laid out by Mr. Tapp. And he has also put some comments in parentheses besides some of them. Mr. Tapp is here if you have any questions. Okay.
I would move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Wilms, seconded by Mr. Wozniak. Is there any discussion? Mr. Jurtson.
All right. Councilmember Snow?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Burke.
Yes.
Carried, 6-0.
Thank you. The next resolution is amending the rules of order and procedure of the Bella Vista City Council to authorize meetings via video conferencing technology in the absence of a statewide public health emergency. Mr. Flynn, this is yours.
Yes, the reason I propose this is the city attorney pointed out to us under existing law, you can only have a meeting by Zoom if the governor has declared a state of emergency. And recently, the state attorney general made a ruling that it would be reasonable for a city to adopt a resolution as part of their procedures where they could have meetings remotely. And, most of the people on city council are, my impression has been, are very prejudiced toward having meetings live. And so I don't expect this to be abused or overused, but this provides for the possibility. There's so many unforeseen circumstances that can come up, as we've found out the hard way the last couple of years. This provides for the possibility that we could have meetings remote, even if the governor doesn't have an emergency, if we feel it's necessary. So that's the reason I proposed it.
Mr. Kelly, if I'm reading this correctly, you can either meet in person or you can meet via video technology, but you can't do a hybrid. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any further discussion at all? Yes?
I would just like to say, I think a city council, traditionally, we've met in person at every possibility, and with the exception of a pandemic, that would be at the governor's call. And I'm content to continue it that way. I think the technology sometimes can be a distraction for us, and I can't imagine any circumstances where we would want to try to meet remotely that isn't an emergency that the governor had declared. So I would stand in opposition to this.
Okay. Any further discussion? Mr. Flynn?
Well, I pointed out during the work session one hypothetical where we've oftentimes had emergency meetings on pretty short notice. And this way, and normally when we're having an emergency meeting, it's because we really have to pass something quickly. And this way, if it happened, there were several council members out of town, you could have the meeting by Zoom and still accomplish your objective. And even though that, and it's still a public meeting, even when by Zoom, and even though that's probably inferior to a live meeting, in that situation, it would be superior to not being able to do whatever needed to be done under the emergency.
Okay. Mr. Snow?
What about an inclement weather? I'm sure that this would cover that, wouldn't it?
Are you asking, is that a
Yes.
question for me? It is any point if the mayor and his or her determination decided that it was necessary to preserve the public peace, health, or safety. So the mayor could certainly say it's too unsafe for us to try and drive to a meeting, so we're going to do Zoom.
Good.
That would be within that.
What about an individual council member that could not attend because of illness or some other
Well, this does not, this particular rule does not allow a hybrid. So, so in other words, it's either all of you on Zoom or all of you in person. It's not going to allow one of you to appear by Zoom while the rest are in person or vice versa. And you could theoretically have a rule that accounted for that, but we did not try to do that based on the limits of our technology and without having to go to a lot of additional expense at this time. I don't want to speak for Mr. Flynn, but I believe that was the reason why we.
Mr. Wilms?
I guess I forgot what I was going to say. One of the questions I have is relative to the calling of the meeting or this here. It doesn't say in the event of an emergency or in the event of weather or whatever as the basis for calling that. It just leaves it up to the discretion of the mayor. Is that correct?
Not always. The majority of the council can make a determination how it wants to meet at any time. So you could so the majority of the council can have its say. But if let's just say the next regular meeting, which you've already set to be in this location at 6:30 on the third Monday of November, or whenever we're going to have it, and you've got this rule in place, and we have an ice storm, then the mayor can, based on that final sentence, if it's in the mayor's judgment, usage of video conferencing technology is necessary to preserve the public peace, health, or safety, the mayor can make that determination. Also, if there is a special meeting called, now as you probably are aware or remember, two of you can call a special meeting to consider a resolution or an ordinance. And so if that special meeting is called, what this rule would allow you to do is to determine in the call whether it's going to be an in-person meeting or a video Zoom meeting. So you would, the alderman calling that special meeting, or if the mayor calls a special meeting, that determination can be made as terms of location at that time.
I apologize for the confusion. I was reading the wrong part.
Okay.
It's actually Rule 10 of our...
It's the Rule 10 would be a new rule.
Rule 10 is the thing that sets the scene.
That is a entirely new rule if you adopt it.
And I missed it. I apologize.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Just a clarification, I apologize. Jason, did you say that if two city council members are calling a meeting to discuss a resolution or an ordinance, those city council members could determine whether it was in person or
That's
on
right.
a video
The
conference
call, if one of your rules, and your entire packet's in the agenda, but if you look at Rule 2, and it used to be 3 members, and then you all changed it to 2. If you remember, that was a year or 2 ago you did that. So the mayor can call a special meeting, or any 2 council members may call a special meeting by signing and providing a notice to the city clerk announcing a special meeting and stating in the notice the agenda, date, time, and location of the meeting. So what Rule 10 does is it gives you the option in that where you're stating where it's going to be, for it to be on Zoom.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Or any video conferencing technology. It doesn't have to be just Zoom.
But it's required to be video, not
Yes,
not
it's
telephone.
video conferencing technology. That's what the AG limited her opinion to. So it's going to have to be something like Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx, where you can see and talk to each other.
And like any other meeting, it has to allow for public access.
In order for it to comply with FOI, and that's also in this new rule, it has to be consistent with the requirements of FOI. The meeting may be conducted via video conferencing technology, and that the technology shall permit audience viewing and participation to the fullest extent permitted at in-person meetings. As you all know, we had many meetings of this nature on Zoom, and we'd have public comment on the Zoom. They would get the login, and that's what that means. And then obviously an opportunity to view and hear what everyone's saying.
Okay, anybody else want to weigh in? I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So
Mr.
moved.
Wilms,
Second.
second by Mr. Wozniak. Any final decision, or excuse me, discussion? Mr. Jertson?
All right. Councilmember Burke,
No.
Councilmember Fowler,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilms,
Yes.
Councilmember Wozniak,
Yes.
Councilmember Flynn,
Yes.
Councilmember Snow,
Yes.
carried 5-1.
Thank you. The next resolution, accepting the financial audit report presented by the Landmark PLC for the year ending December 31st, 2020. I believe that Finance Director Hall took you through it at the work session, and she did not receive any further calls from anyone. So I'm assuming everybody's okay with it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Wilms, second. Mr. Jertson?
All right. Councilmember Snow,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Thank you. The next resolution, establishing residential and commercial rates for solid waste, trash collection in the city. We do this at this time of the year with Republic. Our contract states that we use the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, for water, sewer, and trash, which just recently came down a bit. It was at about 3.7. It's come down to 3.5, so we saved a couple of pennies. So the increase is 3.5% as laid out in your packet. Are there any questions or discussion at all, Mr. Flynn?
How many years does that contract run?
It'll go till 2027. Anyone else?
But it requires, and it allows for an annual review of the rate structure.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second?
Mr. Wilms and Mr. Wozniak.
All right. Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Thank you. The next resolution authorizing the city staff attorney to initiate legal proceedings against Cooper Communities, Inc., any parent or subsidiary company and/or any of its officers or directors to facilitate condemnation and possession of right-of-way for purposes of completing the Mercy Way Bridge and the Trail Improvement Project. So what we're saying here is we have a plan in place to widen the Mercy Way Bridge to 4 lanes and also put a bike path on there so that they're not riding on the road. We have quite a few grants. The Walton Family Foundation is actually paying for the bike path bridge. But we need additional rights of way because we're going to widen the road as well right up to 71. The way it works is we hire an independent third-party appraisal company, and they go out and they appraise every single parcel that our engineers are saying that we have to acquire. Once that is done, then it goes to RDOT. RDOT signs off on it eventually, and then it comes back and the company actually goes out on behalf of the city and makes an offer. Everyone accepted except CCI, a piece on the east side of the bridge. They wanted $80,000 more than the appraisal, and we only pay the appraisal. We're going to see a similar situation in the next resolution, but we'll address that in a minute. So that's what this is all about, is making sure that we have adequate rights of way that our engineers, which is Burns Mcdonnell, is telling us that we need for this project. Are there any questions at all? Mr. Wilms?
Only a comment, Mayor.
Sir.
One comment is that during our work session, we learned on the appraisal for this property in particular is that it was elevated in terms of its appraised value, elevated in the interest of the party, the private party concerned here. The land is zoned apparently residential currently, recognizing that it had the potential for commercial usage in the future. The appraiser valued it as a commercial-based property, so they already increased the value over what it actually is today as zoned residential. Secondly, a portion of that land may be in the floodplain. I don't know if it's verified that it is or is not, but it may be in the floodplain, and they discounted that and didn't take it into consideration, which would have reduced the value. So I think all in all, the city has been more than, we bent over, I guess, to be more than fair. The appraiser has done that. I think in the interest of the project, it's sometimes necessary for municipalities to be the bad guy and move forward offering a reasonable and fair market value for the property or the property rights being acquired. In the case here, we're looking at buying the area, which is about a half acre, that will be used for the bike trail transition, coming around from underneath the bridge, bringing it up to ground level on the east end of the bridge on the north side. So it's important for the community, it's important for the city to finish that connectivity, which is not fully there today, as I recall, as I understand. And so this will supplement the connectivity of the trail system for pedestrians as well as bicyclists interested in using it. So I certainly support the proposed resolution.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
No, I would just like, to say, Councilmember Williams, I know you probably wasn't exactly meant like this, but I don't know if I've
position the city as being the bad guy here.
Well, sometimes they're viewed as the bad guys.
And regardless of whether it's this resolution or the following, regardless of who we're moving forward on the condemnation.
Okay, anybody else? All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Wilms, Mr. Flynn?
Okay. Roll call vote. Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Thank you. The next resolution authorizing the city staff attorney to initiate legal proceedings against Wilpet Investments LLC, any parent or subsidiary company and/or any of its officers or directors to facilitate condemnation and possession of right-of-way for purposes of completing the Mercy Way Bridge and Trail Improvement Project. So this particular piece that we require is the gas station on the corner of 71 and Mercy Way. And Wilpet Investments is the company that owns the land. Okay? Is there any discussion at all?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's Mr. Wozniak and Mr. Fowler.
All right. Roll call vote again. Councilmember Wozniak,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Thank you. The next resolution, awarding bid and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with Manhattan Road and Bridge Company in an amount not to exceed $5,625,229.60 for the Mercy Way Corridor Improvement Project. So what we have done through our engineers is we took it out to bid to actually build the bridge. Doug, we got 3 back. I haven't looked in the packet. Let me have a look here.
That's correct.
3?
Yeah.
The most expensive was over $7 million. Incredibly, this bid is the same price that we were given to build this 3 years ago. And the company that we have selected, or that we're proposing to select, is the one that built that very long piece of bridge over 71 down at the intersection where the bypass is. And you may have seen them actually putting it up, and they had, the huge cranes and everything. These folks build bridges all over the place and have a very strong reputation. But that's how we got to this point here, is we have to, by law, go to bid, and we receive the bids, and we're, in this case, selecting the lowest one. Mr. Wilms?
I have a question, Mayor. Are we at risk by awarding this contract, given that we haven't been through court on the other 2 right-of-way issues?
No.
No? Okay.
I mean, we will get possession of those rights of way as soon as we file. We have a right to get an order of possession. So,
Okay. So that's a procedural thing?
That's procedural. And I thought you were going to talk about the order of which we discussed at the work session, that the state has to approve and then we sign the contract, and if we sign first and for some reason they don't approve. But I've chatted with the mayor about this. We're not going to exercise that final contract or execute that final contract until we know the state is signed on. So you're authorizing the mayor to approve it, but you're not approving it yourself. You're authorizing the mayor to do so.
Once
and
the Arkansas
he's not-
DOT signs off on it. and says
That's
it's good.
correct.
Yeah, okay.
Once it's signed, then we're on the hook. So we want to make sure we've got that money.
Mm-hmm. Mr.
Move to
Flynn?
approve.
And these funds are all covered by the various grants?
Not all of them. I forget the city exposure is about 300,000.
Mayor, council,
The attorney has the mic.
at this point, that's a preliminary number, but we're still waiting on final expenses on the Blowing Springs to Metfield connector, because if you'll remember, you approved a grant that covered that trail
And
some improvements to the
bridge,
bridge, and
yeah.
whatever's left over, we can apply to the bridge. So it may come back 0. We're still waiting on that number.
Okay. Good question. Anybody else?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay.
All right. Roll call vote. Councilmember Snow,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Burke.
Yes.
Carried, 6-0.
Thank you. The next resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into supplemental agreement number 2 with Burns and Mcdonnell Engineering Company, Inc., related to the Mercy Way Corridor Improvement Project. As I understand it, Mr. Tapp, this takes us up into the next level where Burns McDonnell is going to be doing the inspections as the bridge is being built, et cetera. Is that correct?
Mayor, yes, sir, that's correct. There's a whole host of jobs that they'll be doing for us, and I'd like to introduce one of the engineers from Burns McDonnell's here, Travis Rapp, if you have questions for him. He and his group will actually be doing the observation, construction management, construction inspection, and so forth.
Welcome, Travis. Thank you for great patience this evening. Are there any questions, Mr. Wilms?
Inspection-wise, will that be pretty much full-time once they start active construction on the bridge?
The inspection is intended to be half-time. We're going to be out there at least for 20 hours a week, and we're going to allocate our time to provide the most services to the city and ensure that the project gets built according to the standard specifications and the plans.
Okay. Any other questions?
Motion to approve. Second.
Mr. Mr. Wozniak and Mr. Wilms.
All right. Roll call vote. Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Snow.
Yes.
Carried, 6-0.
Thank you. Final resolution of the evening, setting the meeting schedule of the Bella Vista City Council for calendar year 2022. Mr. Jertson put this together for us as he does every year. Are there any questions at all? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Wozniak and Mr. Flynn.
Discussion.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say again, Mayor Christie, I know you couldn't be at our last work session, but we definitely had a full room there. I think in the best interest of our work sessions, we should use a facility with more space available for public participation. And I'd like to see us move out of the City Hall conference room and have all of our meetings in here. I know in the past we've had some concerns about the audio, the speaker system. I think that can be solved for. I'm happy to participate in figuring out what we need to do so that we could use this room with more room for public access.
The only thing is I don't want to box us in a corner. I think we need the flexibility to be able to move if need be at the last minute. For example, there might be a conflict with the Planning Commission. And they may have something urgent that's coming down the pipe and they can only meet the same time we can, so we need the ability to be able to move back and forth. Would you agree with that?
I would,
Yeah.
if we generally could have our work sessions here. If
Yeah.
that's, unless there's a conflict.
Now, in order to make the mic work, because we've spoken to
We need to
IT.
talk about procedures first.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a motion to approve the resolution and a second.
Yes.
So the calendar that's before you says that the work session shall be conducted at the City Hall conference room and that the regular meetings will be in here. So if you want flexibility, we're going to need to reword that in some way so that I don't know what determines when we'll be here, when we'd be there.
Mr. Kelly, would it be appropriate then that we move to table until next month?
Well, there's a pending motion on the floor to approve it, so I
Right.
think the motion to table at this point would not be in order because there's another pending motion on the floor. So unless someone wants to withdraw their motion to approve.
Well, I'd like to withdraw my second. I was focusing on the dates, not the locations.
Okay.
Well,
I'll second the original one.
well,
No.
You made the motion.
Someone has to
Somebody else second it then. Yeah.
no, someone needs to withdraw their motion. I don't know who made the motion.
I did, and I'm not withdrawing.
Okay, so you've withdrawn your second.
Yes, if that's allowed.
All right, so there's a pending motion that needs a second.
I'll second.
All right, so now there's a motion and a second. So the motion to table is still not in order
Right.
Okay.
because there's a pending motion on the floor.
Fair enough. And what would be the ramifications then if the city council does perhaps now vote against adopting
Here's
this?
what okay.
Yeah.
If y'all approve this and you decide you want to change it, let me know, and next month we'll do another one and supersede this and
That's
put it
one
the
way.
way
What
you
if it
want.
doesn't get approved?
Then
We just
if
have.
if tonight it doesn't get approved, you
we-
don't have a calendar for next year, and we'll have to do it again anyway.
Well, we'll do it next month, right? Yeah,
I
okay.
would assume we would. We got to do it before January 1.
Right,
so-
right.
And by
Fair
law,
enough.
you have to meet at least once a month, so
So we have options.
you've got a little time.
Okay, so we've got a motion to approve on the table. Mr. Jurtson?
Okay. Councilmember Snow,
Yes.
Flynn,
No.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
No.
Burke.
No.
Mayor, you may vote to approve if you so desire. It's a tie vote.
No, I won't vote.
All right, so the motion, the resolution fails.
Fails.
We'll get it next month.
We'll get it next month. Okay, meetings and announcements. The City Council special meeting to approve benefits for 2022 will be November 2nd, 2021 at 3:30 in the City Hall Conference Room. The next City Council work session will be held Monday, November the 8th at 5:30. The next regular meeting of City Council, Monday, November the 15th at 6:30. The Planning Commission work session will be October the 28th at 4:30. The Planning Commission regular meeting will be November the 8th at 4:30. The Board of Construction Appeals will be November the 9th if needed. If you're interested in attending Officer Cummins' funeral, that will be at 11 o'clock at Cross Church this Friday. Yes, Mr. Snow.
For the record, Mayor, I've been thinking about this. As I said, Councilman Fowler basically called Mr. Kelly and myself being incompetent pretty a while ago, in addition to referring to me as a monkey. I think he owes us an apology.
Jerry? No. Okay.
No what?
No. If he wants to give you an apology, he can do it, but it's not part of a council meeting.
Well, his statement was a part of the council meeting.
We're not going there, Jerry. Okay? Okay. That's it, and we're adjourned, and happy Halloween. Thank you.